everyone, to another episode of the Sandhill interview series, where we discuss the science and art of navigating complex wealth. In this series, we speak with subject matter experts and thought leaders around all things pertaining to managing and dealing with complex wealth situations. I am Sara Craven, Chief Wealth Manager with Sandhill, and in today's episode, I'll be interviewing Marlis and Kjartan Jansen, founders of Graddha, a wealth consulting firm that works with individuals, couples, families, and family offices to leverage wealth as a tool for human connection, empowerment, and creativity. Marlis is a licensed psychotherapist who is trained in wealth psychology and a sixth-generation member of a family of stewardship. This combination of professional training and life experiences gives her a unique perspective on the nuances and complexities of owning financial wealth. Marlis holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in anthropology from Harvard University and a Master's of Arts degree in psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies, and a graduate certificate in financial psychology and behavioral finance from Creighton University, Heider School of Business. Kjartan brings to Graddha a combination of financial acumen and personal experience. With almost 2 decades of experience in the field, he is committed to normalizing finance for clients. Kjartan holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Bergen in Norway and a master's degree in applied economics from the University of Michigan. Kjartan also is a CFA charter holder. So, before we get started on our interview, I want to share that below you will find more of a background on these exceptional experts, including a link to have a private conversation for yourself or your clients with them following the interview. So let's get started. Marlis and Kjartan, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to
We're
have you.
delighted to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you. So first of all, tell us the genesis behind starting Graddha and what sensitivities and complexities are you really seeking to navigate in your work?
Sure. So as you referred to earlier, Sarah, I grew up in a family of stewardship. We had a family office. I grew up in the Bay Area here. And while there were people around me that had more and people around me that had less, I was not part of the management of the family office. And so that was something I just didn't partake in and didn't have a lot of mentorship. And so when I became an adult, I found myself not able to effectively manage my own personal finances. And money and wealth wasn't something that we really discussed in our family. And so I found myself in a situation that I realized I really wouldn't want anybody else to be in. And I know that there are a lot of people in that situation. And so in my first job out of college, I worked in 10 years into that. I worked in the healthcare industry where we were designing healthcare information services for people to help them make healthcare decisions. And I realized that people don't make decisions based on data. They make decisions based on intangibles, like whether they trust their doctor, do they feel heard? And so when there's a decision that's very, very important to somebody's well-being, they don't use data as a primary influencer of their decision-making. And so I became very interested in how people make decisions, and I went to psychology grad school and realized that I really wanted to sort of deconstruct a little bit more about how people make money decisions and what influences them. And in my own family, I had seen family dynamics that had long-term ramifications for family relationships, and wanted to see what I could do to help people become more agile around wealth and wealth decisions. So let's see, what are some of the dynamics, do you ask? Family dynamics around wealth are complicated. I addressed that a little bit in my own background. We recently talked to somebody who called talking about money the non-versation. And so it was just something that they wanted to try to get more, skilled at managing the non-versation. Inheritors need guidance. So mentorship should happen early and often, and in a lot of cases it doesn't. Financial literacy is taught, but the actual increase in use of those financial skills doesn't go up much. There's actually research around that. And then the clear articulation of purpose and values in the family really helps to motivate cohesion. So that's on the family dynamics side. Inheritors needing guidance. Sorry, I got distracted a little bit there. Successful families adapt and change through the generations. They need to be able to do that. Wealth doesn't last forever. And so people need to be able to bring in creativity and generativity. And in families that stay cohesive and together, they work that into their identity. And so that's when families talk about purpose and values and staying together, it's not in the interest of one simple business or even a business at all necessarily. And then stewardship is a practice. So we talk about elevating ownership to stewardship. So owning wealth is one thing, but stewarding wealth for the future and allocating it toward future generations is a practice that requires commitment and action and mentorship. So each of these issues is very deep and multifaceted. And it's our goal at Graddha to break them down into accessible and actionable pieces, because they seem like really big kind of things that are hard to grasp. And so what we try to do is take our clients through, processes to help them break them down and understand them for themselves on a deeper level.
You've touched on some remarkable things here that we see in a lot of our regular work. You have the interconnectedness of family and family dynamics and relationships and needing to make decisions. And oftentimes you're making decisions as a family. But importantly, and I think that you really explore this in your work, is that everyone comes with a different belief or perception about wealth. They can see it either as an opportunity, or some maybe even see it as a responsibility. And so, you've touched on all of those points in the context of the work that you do. So can you talk with us a little bit more about what your process is when you're meeting with either an individual or a family or a couple?
Yeah. Let's see. So each client is unique. And that said, we do have a process that we use to help a client assess where they want to go. And so we start out with a discovery process. And in that discovery process, we find out what the client's interested in, where they are now, where they'd like to go, and where are the gaps. So that is just the first, it's usually 3 to 6 months with a client, that depending on the complexity. And then we take the work into 3 realms. So we talk about the personal realm. How does a person relate to their wealth? What do they consider to be their wealth identity? And in the case, I know we're going to talk about first generation wealth creators a little bit later, but in the case of a wealth creator, they're taking on a new identity. So the personal aspect of the work is super important. We talk about it on a family or community level. What do they share? It doesn't have to be a family, right? But if they're working within the context of a community, how does it apply to them on a group level? And then how we call it structural, but it's really about what are they putting in place to support the purpose and the values and the goals that they aspire to express. So the structural level, it can look like trusts, it can look like, making sure that their purpose and goals are integrated into their financial planning process. It can even go into tax and definitely into estate. So those are just, so we look at it personal, family, and structural. And then if it's a family office, when we've been pulled into family office work because we're aligning the team, and the work of the family office team with the purpose of the family. And so we do family office work when we can make sure that we know what they're trying to achieve for their family clients.
And adding to what Marlis said, there's often a fair bit of governance work as well that we will help the families go through. And we like to say, focus on the business of being a family rather than what often is a family business, and treat it equally importantly.
Yeah, I'm sure, because I'm sure that getting into the generations, the earlier generations don't want to assume that the younger generations carry those same values that the family may share in terms of wealth and wealth creation. And so that joint conversation becomes very important. And I imagine, Kjartan, to your comment about it being a family business, you probably are greatly informed by the work that you have done in your own family office and family foundation. You draw from that experience, I'm sure.
Yes, for sure. And Marlis, do you want to give a little background there? Or?
Yeah. So in terms of my own family office, I wasn't involved in the family office from the beginning, but I got involved, on the philanthropic side. So when I was in my mid-20s, I was asked by my father to take some leadership in his family, and I didn't know what that meant because I hadn't been involved. But what I have observed through all of the experience on the philanthropic side, and then just watching the family office and the splits, there were several splits actually within one generation, offices that split and formed other family offices, is that the family office is really an extension of the family system. And so the way that who gets a seat at the table has a great effect on the way the family will be, in the way that the rising generation will adopt its wealth identity, what services are offered. So there are some family offices that are pretty stripped down investment vehicles, and there are others that offer a variety of services, including private flight or bill pay or whatever it is. So the way that family offices organize have a very profound impact on the way the families end up being and behaving. So paying attention to the family office team is really important. And then through the family foundation, I have learned that philanthropy cannot be forced. So philanthropy is one way of making impact, but a family with a foundation really has to, philanthropy has to be very closely connected to a person's passions and a person's sense of purpose. And that's one great way to make impact, but it's only one. And there are lots of other ways of making impact. And so with Graddha, we don't prescribe philanthropy to anyone. We offer guidance if that's what they want to do, but we don't prescribe it to anyone. Yeah. And
I might add that I'm what we call an outlaw. So full disclosure, Marlis and I are married. So we're and have two daughters, teenage daughters. So we say we're a family working with families. In my outlaw role, I did take a board seat at the family office, which has been a terrific experience. And I'm finding that it allows me to very quickly grasp the complexities of our client family offices, understanding the complexities of how to manage a gazillion different partnerships that all do different things, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure things we're very familiar with Sara, and I guess it also has given me taught me a language that makes it easy to communicate with family offices as well as our family couples and individual clients, of course.
Terrific. How about difficult decisions? You must really see the family dynamic come to full force when these families are faced with making excruciating decisions. What are your thoughts on how to navigate through some of that process? Hopefully, families have already gone through your consulting work together, but I'm sure many have not and can learn a great deal with how to deal with that.
You want to take this one?
Sure. What we do often witness families who try to make important decisions without having first identifying their underlying purpose and values. And so what we'll usually recommend is that we start with a workshop to get them together under non-COVID times in person. Of course, today it's a little bit different. where they discuss some critical things that they often don't think they share anymore. So it's been wonderful to see how many families really light up when they discover that they actually share 3 to 5 values, and they walked around for possibly years thinking that they didn't share anything anymore because they held different political persuasions perhaps. So there was one person was a lot more passionate about this than the other, so they were focused on their differences. So we start by helping them get back together and see what they share. And we also will spend some time on communication styles, which is incredibly important, and show how different styles express themselves differently, and often see multiple light bulbs go off. It's like, oh, that's why you're talking in this way, and that's why you're reacting in this way when I say that, because people have such different responses to it. So that's really the starting point. And we, in these conversations, what we do, which is also very powerful, is we make sure that it's all forward-looking, so that we don't dig up the past, and we let them discover that they have a path forward together that they can be excited about. And once you've gone through that, having these difficult, what seemed like a difficult conversation before seems less difficult, because it's not mired in the past and in you did this and you said that and you remember that time when that person was so horrible, et cetera, et cetera.
My goodness,
really relax.
Yeah, well, and you are likely uncovering some new respect around that family table, right? If you are identifying connections between family members that perhaps they hadn't recognized before, and to really be able to hear each other in a new way, that's very impactful work. Kjartan, you mentioned COVID-19. In this extraordinary environment that we are now all operating within, how are your conversations with your clients changing? Other than the operations of having to do Zoom calls.
Right. And it's not just COVID. We've had lots of things happen in the last few weeks.
Absolutely.
That seems to be different. There's the Black Lives Matter events following the events in Minnesota, and people are grappling with the concept of privilege more than ever, and it's become a very loaded word. And for those who have it, we find, and this is a terrific thing, that they really want to find a way to be constructive with it, to have it help their community, however they define their community. And it's also a time, going back to the communication styles, where we see that people are really stressed. And when people are stressed, their communication pattern changes. So it's an important time to remind people, people we've worked with, to look back at the exercises they've done and see, oh, so my brother is acting in this weird way now. But wait, it's really not that weird, because that's exactly what you should expect when he starts getting stressed. And so it helps normalize some of the the new behaviors, if you will, that we're not necessarily used to being as prolonged as they are now. And of course, many families aren't able to be together when they want to, because they might have been in different cities or different parts of the world even when this started. And so it's different and the same.
Yeah, and I imagine not being able to be in the same room together really creates a different kind of stress that adds to that communication and the situation. Interesting.
I just want to add to that too, that it's really, people are really questioning the nature of human connection in this time. So people are considering, do we pod up together, or do we see each other on Zoom, and what does that feel like? And what's important? They're really kind of getting to see from a different perspective the importance of family. And then the other issue that, is front and center is mortality with COVID. Like we're seeing, the height of COVID in New York, what was it, like 1,000 people a day dying? And so I think a lot of our clients have actually come to us and said, hey, we need to have some conversations because this is really bringing up our mortality.
Yeah.
So it's been a catalyst for conversations because people are feeling a renewed sense of urgency to explore what family's really about.
It's a very introspective time and perhaps with some reprioritization of things. So yeah, thank you for noting that. I love that. So get back, Marlis, you started to talk us about Generation 1 families. In the Bay Area, certainly, and with our work at Sandhill, we very regularly navigate what we call sudden wealth. It could be a liquidity event, either an IPO or a merger, acquisition, or the sale of a business. Very similar, in fact, to someone coming into an inheritance. So what are the situations that you see that Gen 1 family dealing with conceptually around the idea about sudden wealth, and how do they become who they are intended to become when they've had such a significant event?
Yeah, well, we love working with first generation wealth creators because there's such an opportunity to set a tone for the ensuing generations. A lot of the times, some families are playing catch up. Like we've some of our clients are in like generations 3 and 4, and they're trying to pick up pieces from, generations past maybe that haven't put things together in a way that's easy for them. And so they're trying to kind of create better relationships in the wake of that. But when you have a first generation wealth creator, you have such an opportunity to set the tone for the family going forward. And so, I think that, are you familiar with Jim Grubman's book, Strangers in Paradise? Thank you, Kjartan. So his paradigm is that creating wealth is like going to a new culture where you don't know any of the customs or and that's really true. So first generation wealth creators didn't grow up with it, and they are learning as they go and dealing with all of the attitudes and all the things that they grew up with in terms of attitudes about what it means to be rich, or what does it mean about you if you are, and so there's a lot of process that they're navigating unconsciously while they're still working really hard and trying to give their kids the best life they can give them. So it's a complicated process that when we can bring mindfulness to it, and also a process that is stepwise and actionable for them, so it's not overwhelming, then they can often relax and be excited about looking at it. But sometimes it's hard to look at it because there's something shameful about it to begin with.
Interesting.
And so, yeah. I love it that you asked that question because, clearly if these are your clients, you're doing everything you can to help them, address everything they're facing, not just their financial situations.
Yeah, thank you for that. And we absolutely do. And many come with exactly those intentions in mind for the careful and thoughtful planning work and laying the foundation and a framework for their family and generations to come. But it's in the psychology of that wealth that, I really see your work being so impactful in helping to, as you say, set the tone. Because I imagine, and I believe you mentioned this, I imagine that it's in their subconscious to some extent that maybe they recognize what those challenges are and they just can't grasp or articulate how it is that they're supposed to be feeling. And we navigate those conversations all the time. And that's where our work together, because Sandhill being a registered investment advisor, we have the investment management and we have the thoughtful, mindful financial planning. But the psychology is where, in helping them articulate what wealth means to them for a family, is a really big piece of that puzzle. Thank you. And another thing that is very clear in our work is that no one is immune to the personal and interpersonal concepts around wealth. Do you have have you ever met someone who wasn't impacted by the extraordinary experience?
No.
No, I mean, I like to tell the story about how I went to open the first bank account ever for my business, and told the guy I needed a business bank account. And he said, well, what does your business do? And I told him. He said, wait a minute, can I talk to you? My wife and I, it's the only thing we fight about. And I thought to myself, well, I just want a bank account. So it was that thing where every time we tell people what we do, it's like telling someone you're a doctor, and they say, can I show you my scar?
Yep. Yes. It's everywhere, and you're right. And you mentioned, with this example in the bank, isn't that one of the things that's on the top of the list that couples argue about is money, right? So you can really be quite helpful there is very important work. So as we've touched on a lot of concepts today, but we see at Sandhill in particular that it is, as we've already mentioned, it's not just about the investment management or the financial planning, but we really want to service the whole client and the whole client family. So thank you, Marlis and Kjartan, for our time together today. And as a reminder for our audience, click below for more information, or if you are a Sandhill client and you'd like to have an introduction to Marlis and Kjartan and their amazing work with Graddha, then reach out to your wealth manager and we'll facilitate an introduction. But see you next time. Thank you, Marlis and Kjartan, again.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.